On Timcast IRL a few weeks ago, I made a prediction. I said I thought lockdowns were going to get worse because Democrats don't have anything moving into the midterms and fear would be their only opportunity. I wasn't so sure if they would go for it. Like, I don't think it's a 100% certainty, but I thought so. I was like, nah, ending the restrictions and shutting down all the COVID narrative stuff is not going to benefit them. Luke Rutkowski, who was on the show for some time, and he's going on his hiatus little adventure, said that he thought it was over, that they're going to have to ease all of the restrictions, not just because of the politics, but because of Omicron. That because Omicron was more transmissible and less deadly, people are all going to get it to some degree, but then they'll end up with some kind of natural immunity, and thus we're going to stop hearing about it. And I thought it was wrong. Now I will say I stand corrected. I, in fact, was wrong. It was a guess, and it was a guess based off of, moving into politics. But I see now the error of my ways. I think Luke was right. Take a look at the stocks right now. You've got Amazon down a little bit. Netflix taking a big hit in their stock. Peloton down as well. Now, I can't tell you exactly why all of these things are taking a hit. Also, cryptocurrencies took a big hit. But it seems it is interesting to me, at least, that these stocks that are getting highlighted are the lockdown stocks. The big box stores, Netflix, Peloton. Why were they so valuable? Well, when you can't go outside, you ride your Peloton. When you can't go outside, you watch Netflix. When you can't shop at stores, you shop through Amazon. Seems to me, people in the know, people who are trading stocks and might have some insider information, have begun making moves as if the lockdowns are about to completely end. And we've seen this in some countries already. In the UK, they're just shutting it all down. Maybe, based on the fact that Boris Johnson, the UK, and these politicians decided to end all restrictions and all vax passports, many people started to make small predictions. You end up with someone who understands the news saying, I'm going to bet against lockdowns now. And this creates a wave of people just following suit. So maybe it's not really that anyone knows, but wisdom of the crowds, my friends. But let me give you a real, tangible example of the narrative breaking and something that says to me, well, it's over. It's this story from The Hill and the peripheral stories. Bill Maher, HBO, mainstream media, blah, blah, blah. He says to Fauci, don't sit there in your white coat and tell me just do what we say. It's a remarkable thing to be coming from Bill Maher, and it's a year and a half too late. Fauci said, do as you're told in November of 2020. And Bill Maher is only just now realizing what was said? Sure. Bill, in my opinion, is not relevant to the conversation. And I'll break that down a little bit because a lot of people, give me pushback where I tweeted about that. But when Bill Maher, who is a mainstream liberal personality, starts questioning the narrative and the orthodoxy, and now, even if he is a year late, starts questioning Fauci and has on Bari Weiss, who said, I am done with COVID. It sounds like the establishment has backed down. It sounds like they're now formally saying, this is it. We're going to open the doors again. We're going to get back to normal. And I think there's some good news here and there's some bad news here, but mostly just good news. The bad news is only a little bit, and I'll explain. Actually, it's not necessarily bad news. There's good news, and then there's, areas of concern. We'll put it that way. Let me read the story from The Hill. Then I want to show you what Bari Weiss said. I'm going to break down where the establishment is, but then I want to talk to you about my thoughts on this. Bill Maher pushing back against blindly following the advice of Fauci. Quote, that's not a criticism of them like they're being corrupt. Although there certainly is plenty of corruption in the medical establishment, the Real-Time host said. But I've always maintained that the big overarching theme should be that people look back and say, oh, look how far we've come medically. Yes, that's true. We're not putting wooden teeth in our mouth like in the George Washington era. And of course, we have antibiotics and lots of vaccines and lots of other things that have been miraculous. But in general, we still don't understand too much about how the human body works, Maher said. The medical community, the controversial HBO host said, has been wrong a lot throughout history. Really? This is amazing, isn't it? Why? It's amazing because you probably said the exact same thing 2 years ago when all of this was starting, right? They drilled mercury into my teeth when I was a child. Now, of course, we don't do that anymore. But do you really think in 50 years people will look back and say, oh yeah, we had it all figured out in 2022? No, they will be appalled at things we are doing right now. Despite the country seeing more than 860,000 deaths from COVID, Maher said he was never scared of the pandemic. Really? I was always scared of the reaction to it. And as this played out, that has only proven to be more true for me, he told Deadline. It was never that virulent a threat, I thought, to people who were in good health. Are you not in good health, Bill Maher? You went and got double vaxxed and then complained about how they wanted you to get a booster. Now some people can't help that they're not in good health. We should, of course, protect the vulnerable. But it was mostly a disease of the very old, which every disease is a threat to, and people who have comorbidities, which mostly is due to lifestyle. Of vaccines, Bill Maher, who had COVID in May, said, they just prevent you from dying, which is the great part of it. Let's not undercount that. But if they don't prevent you from transmitting it, and they don't prevent you from getting it, why are we still treating this disease the way we always have? COVID-19 has been known to blah, blah, blah. I don't care the hill. Okay, so Bill Maher, he does this interview talking about where we're at. The problem I have with this, Bill Maher is not an honest person. This is from CNBC, November 12th, 2020. Fauci says U.S. has independent spirit, but now is the time to do what you're told. Wow. I said no. I think most of you said no. And many people said no. We said we are more than happy to accommodate public health with evidence. And they didn't have any. And the evidence they did present was lacking, as it were. I know that when I looked at all of the health stats and I read the CDC data, I said, okay, I'm not too worried about it. I'm worried about older people because a novel virus will spread rapidly. Omicron, while less deadly, has an extremely high, transmissibility. So they're saying, like everyone's going to end up getting it. Luke, of course, I mentioned, said he thinks this will result in herd immunity. But so look, it was bad. When I got it, as you've heard me say, worst illness I've ever experienced. And I got treatment for it. And that's saying a lot. Whenever I get sick, I think this may be the only time in my life I've gotten a medical treatment for an illness. Yeah, no joke. When I had the flu back when I was like, how old was I? Like 18 or 19. And I felt like I was dying. I just slept it out and watched TV and it was miserable. With this, it was so bad, I actually sought medical attention. I think I probably would have been fine, but I do think it's fair to point out a lot of people are concerned about lingering health effects after the fact, long COVID, and how even after you get it, you'll start to feel better, but it's still like a couple weeks to a month before all of the symptoms are gone. Fair point. This was something else. This was something bad. This is something bad. I get it. But to give up your freedoms or to pretend like all of a sudden now Bill Maher is like, don't tell me what to do. Is that a joke? Is that a joke? Let's talk about where we're at. The good news is this. Bari Weiss tells Bill Maher that COVID restrictions and closure of schools will be seen as a moral crime by younger generation and says we must return to normal life. She said, I'm done with COVID. She was like, I did everything. I was desanitizing the Pringles can and all of that stuff, but now she's just done. But what's happening to kids will be seen as a moral crime. Bari, thank you for speaking out. I think Bari is just someone who's, 6 months behind the curve. I'm not saying that to be disrespectful. So no dig at Bari. I think Bari's a good person, and I'm glad she's speaking up. But it took Bari a very, very long time to catch up to where we're at. And it may be because she floats between the mainstream and the independent. So the worlds, the independent, anti-establishment new generation versus the mainstream corporatist generation. She's someone who, worked at the New York Times. But she still has her foot on the ground, and she recognized what was going on. She spoke out against it and said, this woke stuff is not popular. People don't like it. She challenged it. Ultimately ended up leaving, saying the paper had become insufferable. Though I don't think she said insufferable. Those are my words, but that would be the correct assessment. Because she's floating in both realities, she's hearing a lot from the establishment, which is wrong, which lies, from people like Bill Maher. Bill Maher, a week after the Covington incident was proven to be a hoax, still pushed the lie. Bill, seriously, read, why don't you? Now, I can respect the man and Bari Weiss for having logic within their being and being willing to stand up to these to the establishment. But how long did it take them? And is it because they didn't actually read any news? They heard things from other people, questioned it, but just espoused it without challenge? Yeah, maybe. Or maybe they're liars. I don't know. But I don't understand how it took them this long to get to this position. They go to mention. Here's the clip. We just have it right here of Bari Weiss and Bill Maher saying that more and more people, many of whom have been complaint COVIDians, are now starting to feel the tide is turning. Quote, I'm sorry, but if you believe the science, you will look at the data that we did not have 2 years ago, and you will find out that cloth masks do not do anything. You will realize that you can show your vaccine passport at a restaurant and still be asymptomatic and carrying Omicron. And you realize, most importantly, that this will be remembered by the younger generation as a catastrophic moral crime. This is the weirdest thing to me. It seems so tribal for Bari Weiss to come out and say masks don't work, because I'm not going to play that game. I can understand people not liking mask mandates. I can understand people pointing to the box of cloth masks that say does not stop the transmission of viral particles or whatever. But it does stop you from spitting on people. There are studies showing that in incidents where people are wearing masks and people aren't, the people in the situation with masks, transmission was lower. I don't know if it was lower by much, but a decent amount. It's just, I don't understand why this is the game that people play. It's either you're on one tribal side or the other. It's like, is there any nuance here? When you get sick, when you have the flu or a cold or whatever, you wear a mask. Why? Because when you sneeze, you spray snot and other garbage in the air. Or when you cough or when you talk. This is the weirdest thing to me. I just don't get it. This is why I got to be honest. When I see this, I don't trust Bari Weiss and I don't trust Bill Maher. Bill Maher says, Fauci, you can't tell me what to do about an article that happened a year ago. Bari Weiss claims masks don't do anything. The frontline coalition of doctors that have been very controversial and been banned from everywhere actually recommend masks. I got to be honest. I think any person who's actually tracking this honestly will say something like, maybe we're overdoing it with the masks. Maybe the mask mandates are insane and don't make sense. If you're not sick, it doesn't make sense. But even before this, people wore cloth masks if they were sick. And we talked about it all the time. You'd see viral posts on Reddit or whatever. They'd be like, it's interesting how in Asia they wear masks because they want to try and reduce the transmission of whatever they're sick with. But then COVID happens. Conservatives were the ones who first came out saying to wear masks. I had people sending me masks. And then there was a weird inversion where all of a sudden now the right was against the masks. And the left was. I think it had something to do with the mandates. Once the government said you have to, people pulled them off and said, screw you, you can't tell me what to do. It was a choice. And my attitude was just like, it's whatever, I don't like the mandates, don't get me wrong. Could understand people not wanting to wear those for 8 hours at work, especially if they're not sick. But they stop you from spitting and coughing up, garbage on people. So I can say this, the policy was insane. But this just reeks to me of Bari deciding that the left has lost popularity, the Democrats are spiraling out of control, and regular people, the popular narrative is on this side, and they're just going to say whatever they have to say. Now, perhaps I'll take the win, right? That's why I say it's not necessarily bad news. It's more like an area of concern. An area of concern is that I don't believe Bill Maher and his audience and his guests are honest people. I know. Ben Shapiro did a great job on Bill Maher's show a while ago. I've had some high-profile people tell me, like, we're going to reach out. We want to get you on Bill Maher, Tim. And I said, I won't do it. I'm not going on his show to entertain year-old conversations with a show that just, to me, is not relevant. Maybe that's arrogant. I don't know. People are going to say, what I was told by some higher-profile individuals, they were like, it's the mainstream. It's where a lot of regular people are watching the news, and they're going to hear you, and you're going to take that advanced conversation and inject it into the conversation on Bill Maher. And I said, no, I won't do it. And it's not just about Bill Maher's show. It's about, first of all, high-profile people saying they want to make the connection to get me on the show is not an invitation. I've not been invited on that show, and I wouldn't do it. I don't know. Call it whatever you want, sour grapes. But here's my point. What I find disconcerting here is that this is the mainstream show that doesn't crack 1 million views in the ratings. What does it get? 500,000, 300,000? And you're calling that mainstream? That's what bothers me. First, I wouldn't fly out to Los Angeles to go on this show because I'm running a company. That's the easy thing. Again, I will stress, I've not been invited on that show. But we've had some people on the show who are well connected, who are like, would you be interested if we reached out and got you on? I said, I'm not going to do it. And a few of these people, come on, man. And I'm like, no, look, they've not invited me. I want to make sure that's absolutely clear. I don't want to make it seem like I'm upset that they're not inviting me. First, it was very difficult enough, for me to go on Joe Rogan's show in November. We had to bring a trailer with the show, drive it out there so that we could do it. But here's the main issue, okay? Bill Maher is not relevant to the conversation. Let me show you this tweet, and I'll show you what people how people have responded to it. In response to Bill Maher's clip from Bari Weiss, where she's like, I'm done with COVID and all that stuff, I said, Bill Maher's show is irrelevant to the conversation at this point. Being a year behind is better than the rest of media, but it's still revealing. Why watch a show having conversations we all had over a year ago? And I'm not exaggerating. That's why I show this story from CNBC of Fauci saying, do what you're told, from November 2020. It was that long ago. Now, many people said, you don't understand, Tim. This is people in the mainstream waking up to what's going on. These are regular liberals and blah, blah, blah. Now, and I just stop and I say, I don't care about this waking up normies or whatever. Okay, that's fine. The show existed. It's fine that the show happened and regular people are now getting that dose of reality. I said people who already discussed these ideas are sharing this clip with each other. Why? I don't care about year-old conversations just because they happen on a mainstream media show. Is it to let me and others know that they are finally having the conversation? To be honest, no disrespect, I still don't care. Old news. We need to set the news cycle ourselves and stop acting like these shows matter. It is a good thing that Bill Maher is discussing these things. It is a good thing that prominent mainstream liberal types are finally saying enough. It's a good thing. It's a bad thing when prominent personalities are sharing these clips all over Twitter, acting like his show matters to us. We need to stop acting like Bill Maher, the New York Times, and CNN are the dominant cultural powers. They may be. But you will not win that ability to set the cycle unless you assert it. So again, I'm not saying this to be disrespectful to anybody. I understand why people are sharing this. And now, after this, I would say this to everybody who shared the Bill Maher clip and they're very excited about it. Here I am talking about it too. I'm glad we're having that conversation. And I appreciate all of you realizing now that Bill Maher is waking up to this and that Bari Weiss are sharing these ideas. Bari Weiss was late to the wokeness story by 5 or 6 years. And I'm not saying that to be mean. It's just not her world. And I was late to it. I wasn't even, making this kind of content during Gamergate. It was only like a year or two after it I started making content that started breaking into these areas. So we all enter, the conversation when we do. And there are certainly many people who are ahead of me in terms of what their predictions are and, them being correct. But I want to stress this point. This conversation that they're having is old. That's what I want to make sure you recognize from this. You don't need to share them. From this point forward, we should be saying, wow, look at them failing to address issues that we already knew about. I'm 35 in about a month and a half. I'm going to be 36. Yikes, old man, huh? We are inheriting the world, our generation, millennials. Bill Maher is aging out. Bari Weiss, who is around my age, I believe a little bit older than me. No, she might be younger than me. I don't know how old she is behind the curve. We are going to be setting the news cycle. Not just me, a lot of people. I mean, Joe Rogan sets the news cycle to a great degree now. We're going to see it from Steven Crowder. We're going to see it from Kyle Kalinske or Jimmy Dore. Over time, the conversations we have will determine what the nation and the world talks about. Bill Maher is talking about something that probably will not break into the mainstream in the way a lot of people think it will, because we already had that conversation. There was a period where we were the outliers. CNN was getting tens of millions of views or whatever they were getting. I don't know. And we were on the sidelines. Shows like this, people like me, would get only tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of views. As time goes on, and you and I get older, and the younger generation is more inclined with watching this kind of content, and the oldest generation is aging out, viewership is starting to drift into areas like ours. And now, I'm fairly certain that I don't know about on YouTube. I have to check, but I'm pretty sure Timcast, my show, gets more views. Well, Timcast IRL gets more views than Bill Maher's show. That's for sure. I don't know about All in All with his HBO plus his YouTube. His YouTube may actually put him over the edge, but it's shifting. There used to be a point where Bill Maher was getting like 1 million views. Now I think it's way down, and my show's going up. And I don't just mean this to talk about me. I'm talking about everybody. Timcast IRL is growing. We're getting bigger and bigger guests. We're having better and better conversations, and and I think in a few years, Bill Maher is just not relevant. He'll just be out of the conversation completely. I mean, the dude's decently old as it is. He's a boomer, and he had his time. When I was younger, I used to watch his show all the time. I remember being like 18 or 19. This show's been on the air forever. But now, for me, someone who grew up watching Bill Maher, being that city center-left liberal type, challenging the machine, opposing war, now, when I turn on Bill Maher, I'm just like, well, that happened a year ago. How is that relevant to anything we need to discuss or talk about? It's not. And so at this point, for me, I feel like I am not being served properly. The information that I require and the conversations required and the debates with a show like Bill Maher. Ben Shapiro went on and he challenged Malcolm Nance, and it was brilliant. And Ben Shapiro is fantastic. Quick-witted guy. No wonder he's so successful. Seriously. And I just wonder, I guess it's good. I guess it's good those conversations are happening, but I just look at it this way. If we stop acting like the New York Times is so important, if we recognize that Bill Maher is a year late to the party, and people stop conversing about it, you'll go to the water cooler at your workplace, who's, between 30, you are likely between 25 and 34. You'll be at the workplace and someone will be like, hey, did you see Bill Maher? And you'll go, no, I don't watch it. And they'll go, oh, really? And be like, no, I watch, Crowder. And they'll go, oh, I watch Bill Maher. And you'll be like, I haven't watched that show in a long time. I mean, his news is so out of date. He gets so much wrong. And they'll go, wow, okay. Or how about this? Someone says, you see what was going on? You watched Bill Maher the other night? Man, that Bari Weiss lady, she was talking about X, Y, and Z. And you can be like, yeah, that's cool. I don't watch it. I watched Timcast IRL because they had guests on talking about just that a year ago. And the story about Fauci telling us what to do, that was in November of 2020. So I guess, we're just ahead of the news cycle. I'm not saying to be snooty. I'm being somewhat facetious. My point is, with respect to Barry and Bill for finally speaking up to this stuff, you and I already knew all of it. So how are we served? How are we, our generation, better off now from this show? We're not. I can recognize that Barry's speaking to boomers, I guess, and the politically uninitiated. Okay. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying we need to assert ourselves. You do, I do, Crowder, Jimmy Dore, Joe Rogan, everybody needs to start saying we are the ones who are pushing the conversation. And it's not because we want to demand respect or anything like that. Absolutely not. It's because of what's true. And what's true is, we all talked about this a long time ago. That independent media, these podcasts and these channels were discussing these ideas a long time ago. And it's not even about, look, Steve Bannon's fairly mainstream. He was talking about this. And Alex Jones was too. So behind the curve, man. I'll leave it there. It's a good change. It is. I'm glad to see people waking up, and I think the end is nigh for the COVID restrictions. But we'll see how it plays out. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.